Massive input versus spaced repetition with active recall. Which one is better for language learning? I've just been asked this by several people. Apparently, Steve Kaufman has been saying that massive input is all you need. Well, that's all Steve Kaufman says, really. And my answer to this question is very simple. You need both. And there's no reason not to use both. And in fact, you can use both pretty easily and in a way that's pretty convenient without wasting too much time. So the way I see this is that input is much easier to do. It's less effort, of course, but it's realistically it's less efficient than active recall. Active recall is the most effective way to learn any kind of information, not only languages. However, active recall is also difficult, challenging, it's hard work, and it's exhausting, especially in the beginning when you are learning something that you haven't seen that much before. If it's something new, you're learning a language from scratch, active recall is going to be very difficult. However, one round of active recall, according to science, it's equivalent to 5 to 10, so between 5 and 10 passive reviews of a sentence or a word. So you can see how it's much more effective. And also, it's one thing to understand a language, but when it comes to speaking, you need to then think of the language fast enough. And if you've seen a sentence 100 times, then of course you'll be able to come up with a sentence on the spot. But if you've seen it only 10 times, will you be able to? Probably not. You'll recognize it, but you won't be able to think of it fast enough. And also, if you haven't been saying it aloud, you won't be able to. Maybe you'll be able to say it, but it'll take for a while for you to form the sentence, to say it, and also you'll struggle to say the whole thing if it's something longer than short sentences like this. So what's the solution? Well, my advice is to combine both massive input and active recall, flashcards, whatever you want to call it, so that you are getting a lot of exposure to the language and you are getting convenient exposure to the language, because you can review by listening. That's any time, really. You can listen for hours and hours every day while you do all sorts of things like working out or commuting if you go somewhere to work. Anything really, dishes, cooking, you name it. You can do basically anything while listening to the language. Now, if you listen to random stuff or videos or anything like that, and you're not at a pretty good level already of comprehension, that's time wasted, honestly. You can listen to Chinese 10 hours a day, every day, for years, and you'll still won't understand anything. Yeah. You need to know at least 90% of the vocab they're using. And also you need to, be able to understand that vocab in context, inside sentences, and when spoken by native speakers. So how do we start doing inputs early on, or even at an intermediate level, when you want to learn more words, more sentences faster, so that you can move on to actually interesting content to listen to or to read? Space repetition with the input. So you take sentences like this and you read them while listening over and over. Yeah. Play the audio.
Kako si? Dobro sam, hvala. Kako se zoveš?
And you read while listening with the meaning, the translation in front of you, so you actually understand everything. And you do this at least once. Several times would be better. And then you test yourself. You test if you understand it or not without the meaning, right? Where you're from? I'm from Canada. Yeah, I knew those. because I've been reviewing them. So you read while listening several times, the same sentences several times until you understand them easily. You can understand them without the meaning on. And even then, you keep reviewing them. If you understand them without the meaning on, then you can do passive listening with this specific list of sentences. All right? But don't do it with stuff that you haven't seen before, because that's time wasted, really. Yeah? First, read while listening. Make sure you understand everything. Read while listening without the meaning on. And make sure you still understand it. Otherwise, you need more reviewing. And then you keep listening to it. Do spaced repetition. So once a day, or at first, then once every 2 or 3 days, then once a week. But listen to the same lists of useful sentences over and over, right? And this is where flashcards are actually really useful. Once you understand them easily, then you should do flashcards. But instead of doing what a lot of people do with Anki, which is studying, like, okay, I'm going to learn 10 new words a day or whatever. First of all, do not learn single words, like individual words, isolated words. Always learn them inside sentences. That's really important. But also use flashcards to review words inside sentences or complete sentences. Review them after like 5, 10, or even more rounds of reading and listening, and basically massive input with the sentences you intend to learn. So you do the massive input and the flashcards with the same content that you're trying to learn. Because once you understand them easily, you want to be able to say them as well, right? You want to be able to then remember them fast for conversation. And just with input, unless you do a truly ridiculous amount of, insane amounts of repetition of listening and reading with the same sentences you intend to say, and even then, if you haven't been repeating them out loud and you haven't been practicing your ability to remember them, it's going to be hard using them. So if you want to speak, you should do active recall. Again, active recall is going to be very hard early on, way easier after like 10 or 15 or 20 reviews by input to the content. So once you've been reading and listening to the sentences you intend on learning over and over, then you just come here, look at your flashcards, and how are you, Kakosi? Correct. I'm fine, thanks. Sam dobro, hvala. Dobro sam, hvala. Okay, very good. Kako se zoveš? Good. Zovem se Alex. Good. And you'll make mistakes, but you try again. And each one of these reviews is the equivalent of seeing this sentence 5 to 10 times via input, right? So if you just start doing this without any exposure to the sentences before, it's going to be extremely hard, and you're going to get tired very quickly and you'll make progress slowly. But if you first review the sentences 5 times, 10 times, 15, 20 times if necessary, by reading while listening, meaning on, then meaning off, then just listening in the background, you can very quickly get to 10 or 20 reviews of the sentences. You'll understand them easily. Then you do this so that each one of these reviews counts like 5 to 10 reviews of 5 to 10 passive reviews, right? One review of active recall is equivalent to 5 to 10 reviews of reading or listening. So you can do more of them faster later on, once it gets easier with those specific sentences. And with the newer ones you are learning, then you keep doing this. So first the input, repetitive input, then active recall. And with this, it's not only time efficient if they are sentences you've reviewed before, it's also much more efficient when it comes to speaking. This trains your ability to think of the sentences, like come up with sentences fast, whatever you need to say, right? And then that will translate into you then using those sentences correctly in conversation. So, long story short, massive input versus flashcards, use both, right? If the input is easy, then start doing flashcards with them. Active recall. First, always the vocab. Make sure you know the vocab, otherwise the input is a waste of time. Repetitive input with the same sentences, useful sentences, your language islands, over and over until you know them well. First with the meaning on, then meaning off. You should still understand it. Then just listening, passive. Put them on your phone, listen to them while doing something else. And if you still understand them easily, then active recall over and over until you can say them like that without too much hesitation and without too much mistakes and too many mistakes, sorry. And that's how you learn to understand and speak a language fast, by combining the input with useful sentences, repetitive massive input with useful sentences, and flashcards. Yeah, active recall.